And then game 7 was like the craziest game of my life. You know, we was up 20 in the first half.
That's crazy.
And they just started running it. And, you know, when you're on the road in the playoffs, nobody's cheering for you. Every time you score a bucket, it's dead quiet. It's just a totally different vibe. And I just remember, you know, Cleveland was talking a lot. You know, it was telling us we was too young. We didn't belong here. Game 3 and 4, and we blow them out by 30 both games. And it was like, we flipped it on them where it was like, nah, we're here and we're going to compete.
That game 7, though, will come back and be a lesson when you guys go win one on the road.
Yeah. They come out in the third quarter, and Donovan Mitchell, I think, scored like 6 straight points. We just kind of crumbled a little bit where we just felt that pressure. I know what the regular season's like, but then we get to the playoffs, it's a whole different beast.
What's up, everybody? This is Rich Kleiman. Thank you for listening and tuning in to Boardroom Talks. Today we are in Orlando, Florida, with a very special guest, Seattle's own,
Yes, sir.
Orlando Magic star, Paolo Banchero. Welcome to the show.
Rich, appreciate you.
Of course. How you feeling?
Feeling good. Just trying to finish this back half of the season strong and, you know, try to get ourselves in good position for the playoffs.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting year for the team, right? We were just talking about that off air. You start the year with injury. Have you ever had an injury like that in your career where you were out that type of time frame?
No, I really hadn't had anything worse than a sprained ankle, you know, my whole career leading up. So it was a huge adjustment. You know, I missed, I think, 34 games out for over 2 months. And, yeah, it was challenging. I never had to deal with anything like that, you know, so it was a different year this year for sure.
You're young, so you obviously know you'll be back and that this is just part of the journey. But in terms of like stepping back from the game and watching your own team play or watching film, was there something you took or something that time frame in some ways was a blessing in terms of when you returned to the court? Yeah,
I think it just allowed me to see the game in a different lens. You know, I think at first it kind of sucked because I wanted to be out there and it was so early in the season. You know, it felt like I didn't even get to really start the season, you know, because of how early I got hurt. But as I kept going, I just tried to dive into more film, tried to help guys that was out there, you know, try to give them advice, whether it was in the middle of the game or in the film session. So I think it just allowed me to kind of sit back, let other aspects of my, you know, basketball knowledge grow in terms of just film study, game plans. You know, I'm seeing from the bench, you know, how teams are adjusting to us, what we're doing to you know, combat those adjustments. So it definitely helped me in those ways.
And there was a period that you were out where the team actually, you know, was overachieving in a lot of ways, had some big wins on the road. For a young team, like, did you start to see the development with you out of the game of some of the guys as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one player for sure was Franz. You know, I think Franz, like when I went out, you know, he was kind of forced to, you know, carry an even heavier load. And I mean, he took it on and didn't, you know, lose his stride at all. You know, all his numbers went up. He's having a career year and he's been great, you know, this whole year. So just seeing him take that step, you know, because everybody here, myself included, knows how good he is. And so being able to see him kind of take that step and really play at a, you know, all-star level was really dope to see. And then he ended up going down with the same injury that I had, which was a little eerie for me.
Yeah.
You know, it just was crazy because I thought my injury was like really, you know, unique and like kind of weird. And so to see him do the same injury on the same side, it messed me up a little bit. But, you know, I think, you know, now that we're both back, we're just trying to, you know, build back that chemistry.
Yeah. And then Jaylen's out. And it's interesting because, like, you guys went 7 games with Cleveland in the first round last year, right? And you see the way Cleveland came out and how this season's been for them. And I think everyone thought that this year would be this next progression, but then injuries hit.
Yeah.
How do you guys see yourselves staying together as a team? Is the morale and the energy around the team still positive, understanding that this year has just been more complicated?
I think, you know, one thing about the playoffs is, like, it's a new season. And so, you know, we just want to get there to be able to kind of reset and try to make a run. And not having Jaylen obviously is going to be really tough because, you know, that dude, he do, you know, a lot for the team in terms of just his energy and then, you know, the way he elevates us on both sides of the ball, defense and offense. Not having him is going to be tough, but, you know, we want him to get healthy. You know, he's a guy that is going to be here for a long time and, we just want to see him get back to 100%, because we know every time he's out there, he's putting his body on the line. Yeah. He's doing whatever he can to help us win. So, puts more on me in front shoulders and other guys too to step up. But, like I said, we just want to get there to the postseason, hopefully in good standing, so that we can reset and just try our best to make a push and, like you said, finish strong.
Yeah, and I think like you've seen the pattern in the league the last few years, starting with Denver and Minnesota, that continuity is starting to be the key to success in the league. So I would imagine this is part of the journey, and you've got to feel positive about the idea that like you are a young team, that you're growing, and this year was a challenge that you'll learn from. But do you agree that, in today's day, when you see these teams that are succeeding now, it's about sticking together and keeping the team together?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the last few champions, I think they've all had a core group of guys that have been together. I think Boston with Jaylen and Jayson Tatum, and then Denver having, Jamal Murray, Jokić, Michael Porter, kind of those guys staying together and going through, playoff losses and just building after year. I think that's kind of how I see it going here, where, last year was our first year in the postseason. We made some noise, came up short. And this year's been different. We've been hurt by injuries, but I think that's just part of the process and something that, you got to go through. And, I think in the future, these experiences will only make it better and hopefully be able to make runs in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, did you think Cleveland had this type of potential coming off of last year, coming off of that series?
I think when you look at Cleveland, I think the one thing I noticed, like playing in them 7-game series, was like they didn't have many weaknesses. They got a hell of a backcourt and a hell of a front court. And so when you got elite guards and elite bigs, that's a recipe for success. And so, now they've made a couple of trades, got some more depth, on the wings, and, now they're, arguably best team in the NBA. And so, you can kind of see that last year, which is how they play. And then obviously I think guys got better. I think they, switched up some of the stuff they do. They let Mobley kind of open his game up a little bit, which I think, kind of opened their whole team up, And so, and you can tell just by playing against them, they all want to see each other do well. They don't really care who's the leading scorer or who's the guy going off. I think they just want to do whatever it takes for them to win. And so they did, I think they improved a lot.
Mm-hmm. There's obviously, a few great teams at the top. Celtics, Cavs, Oklahoma City, but I think everyone feels like there's a lot of teams that are in play this year.
Yeah.
Is there like a pattern that you think is happening now where there's just going to be a lot more competition across the board? The teams are getting younger, they're getting more athletic?
I think it's an interesting point right now in the league where, you got these kind of legends who've been here since the early 2000s, and, they're still playing at a high level, still carrying their teams. And they still want to win. They still are competitive as ever. Steph just had 56 on us, and he's 36, and he's, still trying to make a run. So you got those guys, that group, and then you got like a secondary group where it's the Giannis, the Jokić, those type of guys, Shai.
Yeah.
And then there's like the 23 and under group where it's like the Ant, Mobley, Cunningham. Like it's just a bunch of us where we're all hungry to, get to where those guys are at it and start, competing with those guys. So, and we're all on different teams. And so, I think it is interesting because the league's going to get younger. There's a lot of good talent that's, coming out of college, coming out of high school. And so it's just going to be interesting to see like where it all ends up. And, just how these teams end up being built, in these next few years and who's able to kind of, mold together and create a team that can make runs.
Have you started to like have at least in your mind, like somewhat of a rival almost, like a young player that you feel yourself getting up for certain games, or even some of the old heads, like you said?
No, I'm a guy like, I get up. Anytime I got a matchup, I'm getting up. I wouldn't say it's one guy yet. I do kind of want that though. I do kind of eventually want that one guy that I know I can go at it with, and I know that I'm gonna see him, in the playoffs or when it matters most. But right now, it's really anybody. Like anytime I see whether it's a KD or Bron or it's a Giannis or Jokić or Jayson Tatum, I'm getting up for those matchups because I just want to be looked at in that same regard. I want to compete with those guys. For, not only championships, but for MVPs as well. So, there's a lot of matchups that I look forward to.
What'd you think of what Bron said about Ant's comment about being the face of the league and how being the face of the league today comes with more than it probably did in the past. And also, I think one thing that came out of that conversation a little bit was when there was faces of the league historically, it was because we knew so few of the players, like on the mainstream level, where today there's 50 NBA guys that people know all over the world.
Yeah.
Do you in some ways feel the same way? You think that's just shifted now, that there is not one face of this league?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some truth to it. I think, I feel like I'm a basketball historian. I've always studied the game. And so, like you said, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't that many NBA players that were known around the world. And so when Michael Jordan came, after Bird and Magic, like he kind of took it over and became just the face, like that one guy who everyone knew. And then I think when LeBron and Kobe came, they kind of carried it. And then Bron obviously kind of ran with it in terms of being the face. But I think Bron, throughout his career, he's dealt with a lot of criticism and scrutiny, and he's been nothing but tremendous his career. So, I mean, and they always compared him to Michael Jordan. And so now, Bron's 40 on his back end. Now whoever that next person is, or they try to make that next person, is only going to be compared to LeBron and Michael Jordan. And, as good as the talent is in the league, like trying to measure a guy up to LeBron and Michael Jordan is like ridiculous almost, because those two are, top two greatest. Yeah. And so I think, it is multiple faces. I think there's so much talent now from around the world playing in the league that, you can point to different guys and, kids can point to different guys as well and be like, I want to be like this guy. No, I want to be like this guy. And so it creates more of a group of our guys. But, I mean, I think it just has to naturally play itself out. Yeah. And whoever is looked at in that regard is going to have to deal with the goods and the bads. But certain guys want it, certain guys don't. But at the end of the day, I think it's always up to the fans or the kids or whoever to kind of who's looked at as the face of the NBA.
Yeah, because it feels like, especially with young people, it's like a player-driven league, right? The NBA culture is so big. And I think even when you hear things about the ratings, that doesn't represent just the culture of the league and how that continues to grow and the influence that it has. I agree with you. I mean, do you feel that the market you're in here has shielded you a little bit ever? And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing from some of the kind of social media chatter that is so divisive at times?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it shielded me, and I think there's goods and bads of it. I think one thing for me, I always say, is I learned in college kind of what comes with being in the spotlight. I think playing for Duke and Coach K's last season, we was under a microscope that whole year. And so I dealt with a lot, on both sides. I dealt with a lot of praise. I playing early. I had a great game. My first ever game against Kentucky in the Garden. I came out, played well. Remember playing against Gonzaga, against Chet, played well. So I dealt with a lot of praise. But then, as the season goes on, you have a couple tough losses. We lost to UNC in the Final Four. So I dealt with a lot of scrutiny as well from, all over. And so I think being here in Orlando, like my first year in the NBA, I didn't play one game on national television my first year. And so, like, no one from back home on the West Coast could even turn on the TV and watch me. When the year before, when I was at Duke, it was every game, so it kind of like made me be more under the radar, but it almost helped me a little bit because it kind of just let me be able to develop without having to always hear like, what I'm doing wrong or what I'm doing right, and people always having an opinion on what I'm doing. So I think I look at it in both lenses, but I definitely think being in a smaller market shields you, just because for the masses, for the ESPNs and whatnot, I don't think it's the most fun or interesting thing for them to talk about. Yeah. But, I think eventually you can get a small market, to the main front and, get them on that stage. I think if you just win games and are able to advance, eventually you'll get on that stage.
Without question. I mean, that is the beauty of the league now and the access that everybody has to it. I think as somebody who knows you, who's a fan of yours, sometimes I'm like, man, you're not talking about this man enough. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not talking about what he's doing. Is that frustrating at all when you see some of your peers maybe at times get talked about a bit more when you're having this incredible first few years of your career?
For me, it's just motivating. Like, I'm a competitor. When I'm not getting talked about, I don't look at it as like, oh, this guy's getting more love than me. I look at it as, all right, like, I ain't done enough. I got to do more. I got to go I got to go harder. I got to, play better. And then sometimes you do play better and you still don't get it. It ain't just going to happen. I got to force the hand. I got to make these people talk about me, So I think just even my rookie year, like, I felt like I had a great rookie season, and I felt like I was the rookie of the year unanimously. And, when I didn't get that, I was a little upset, because I was like, there's nobody even.
You're like, what did you see?
I'm like, what here? Like, what are we talking about? So I think that's where it kind of started. And then my second year, I think becoming an all-star was huge for me, because after my rookie season, my winning rookie of the year, I remember talking to Mike, and I was like, he asked me, like, you think you could be all-star this year? And I really had to think about it, because I was like, damn, like that would be amazing. Like, I would have to really work for that. And so when I was able to get that my second year in the NBA, like, that almost brought me to tears, because I felt like I worked so hard and I wanted it so bad. And then going to the playoffs and playing well, I think, I did get some recognition.
Yeah, that was a great series.
But the one thing about the NBA, I feel like, is that, you're only as good as, your last game. You're only good as your last season. So every year, it restarts, and you have to prove yourself again. Especially, in my position, being here in Orlando, you're always going to have to prove yourself. You're always going to have to show people that, you are legit, you are worth the talk, you are worth the praise. So I think I'm still chasing that. I'm still going after it.
You're an older soul in a lot of ways, right? Like, it feels like you could have played in any era in the league, and how you dominated that series. I think it's just a sign of what's to come. When you were at Duke, was that year as special as it looked from the outside? And obviously playing Coach K's final season, but was that memory something that was incredible for you?
Yeah, 100%. Like, being from Seattle, I kind of already have a chip on my shoulder, because of what you're talking about. I feel like I've been dealing with my whole life, ever since
they took your team away.
Yeah, we always feel like we're sliding in some way coming from the Pacific Northwest. So I always carried that. And so, like, part of my decision of going to Duke was, like, I was never an internet sensation in high school. I wasn't like this big, I was a 5-star recruit, but I wasn't like the guy. And so I wanted to go to Duke to be on the biggest stage, to play for the best coach, to have a chance to be in the best conference and just be on the biggest stage I possibly could, because I felt like I never got to experience it.
Yeah.
And so going to Duke, like, it lived up to everything. Like, it was more than I expected. I still remember, Coach K, telling me, just like in the recruiting process, like, wherever you go to college, you'll be a top 5, top 10 pick. But, if you want to be the number 1 pick in the draft, you have to come play for me. And that was, at 17 years old, like, that was all I needed to hear, and he lived up to every single, thing that he told me in the recruiting process, that he told my parents. Everything that he said would happen if I listened to him happened. And so, for that, I'm forever grateful. And I still talk to Coach, to this day. And he watches, he doesn't, on social media or anything, but he's always watching. So
that's powerful to have him tell you that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember exactly where I was when I heard him say it on the phone. Like, it was like I got chills when he said it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like, Coach K.
Just told me I'm gonna be the number 1 pick.
Exactly. And I tell people too, just Durham in general, like, it's such a great environment, for a person like me coming from, the West Coast, far from home. Like, it's such a welcoming place. You're kind of like protected in like this bubble where, like, everyone's always looking out for you, whether it's the assistant coaches, the support staff being around or being inside the facility. They're always gonna make sure you're good. And, like, I don't have one single bad memory from my time at Duke. Everything was just positive. I learned so much in my time there. And Coach K, he really taught me, like, I think some important qualities for, like, advancing from college to the NBA, and just how to, off the court too, how to handle yourself as a man and a person.
I had this conversation over All-Star break. There was, like, an article that came out about Cooper Flagg, maybe coming back a second year, right? And he won't. It's unrealistic, clearly. But I think that the thing that's not talked about, especially with NIL, is what you just said. There's got to be a player that is going to decide, you know what, let me go back, get this NIL money, and I don't want to play any more than 40 games next year, and keep playing on national TV. I do not think Cooper will do this, but do you see, like, why someone would stay? And, like, did you even think for a second about, like, there was no thought in your head, right?
I mean, no, Coach.
He wouldn't have let you come.
No, Coach wouldn't have let me come back. He told me before I even got to campus. He was like, "This is gonna be my last year, and this will be your only year.
Yeah.
So let's make the best of it, you know." But for sure, like, I mean, Cooper is gonna go number one, so no reason he should go back to school. I love Coach Shire, but I'm sure Coach Shire won't let that happen either. But if it's a guy who, you know, is a borderline top 15, you know, type of guy, and they have a great experience in college and they're making, you know, tons of money, like, I wouldn't be mad at anyone for going back to school, especially in Durham. You know, because like I said, there's so much support around you. It's damn near like you are in the NBA, just with how they operate, you know, the development there and everything. So I really do think that the NIL can change that, and I think some guys, you know, can stay multiple years. But I think Cooper is ridiculous. I remember our first time I saw him in person at Tatum's camp like 2 years ago, and like the one thing that just stood out was like his motor and like all the things he's able to do out there on the court, you know, without the ball in his hands. Like, he running the floor, he's boxing out every time, he's on the glass, he's playing defense, he's in the lanes. And then on top of that, you add to his offensive game, now he's a complete player.
I saw someone joking around about how Oklahoma City could probably flip 10 of their picks.
Oh, that'd be ridiculous.
He could fit in.
Yeah, he could fit in anywhere. I think he could fit. He's a player that I think fits anywhere, honestly. Like, seeing him play, kind of getting to know him, like, has mentality, I think he fits anywhere. I think the one thing about the NBA that I learned is that it's a lot more games, it's a lot more travel, it's a lot more in your body. And so it's hard to do everything on the court every single game, right? Like, you know, you see guys who are offensive superstars, defensive stars, and there's like the two-way stars, but like, how many elite two-way guys are there out there?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think for him, it's just wherever he goes, you know, finding, you know, what is it gonna be that I'm gonna be good at every single night? You know, I know I'm gonna defend, I know I'm gonna be able to, you know, guard the best player, but if you're the best player on offense, your coaches is not gonna want you to guard the best player. And so that's just the NBA. And so I think him just coming in, learning, but I think him coming in, he's gonna be a walk-in, you know, 16, 5-5 out the gate.
Yeah.
You know, just off of his instincts and the way he plays.
Yeah.
So you build on that, you develop that turns into 25, 7-7, you know, if he just develops the right way. So I think he'll be as good as he wants to be. Shire, you know, Shire's a great coach, and I think Shire's done a really good job of, one, you know, playing to his strengths out there. You know, whenever I watch him, Shire's putting him in great actions. He's putting the ball in his hands, letting him operate all over the floor. And then also, they have a great team around him. You know, they have a bunch of other talented players. I went up there after the playoffs last year, and that was when they all first got to campus. Mm-hmm. And so I spent some time with them. And like, I would say the previous 2 seasons after I left, it didn't really feel, when I watched Duke, like that they were all the way connected as a group. You know, they had talented players, but it didn't feel like all the way gelled. And I think just my experience of being around them, you know, that was their first time really being together as a group. You know, I was only there for like 4 days, and I was able to see just like how, you know, a bunch of great guys. They brought in some transfers that were all great dudes, and then the freshmen obviously are all talented, and they all want to win. That's the one thing that they all, you know, put before everything else is trying to win. So I think it showed with how they're playing this season, and, you know, I think they should be able to make a run for it all, honestly.
Yeah. Obviously, I hope you guys make a run, but when you'll go into this summer, you know, what is your process in the offseason like? Like, do you identify things in your game that you know you want to go into the lab and work on for the next year? My
first 2 off seasons have been completely different. Like, my first off season coming off Rookie of the Year, I was doing a lot of moving around. I was going city to city. I was out the country. I was at Fashion Week, you know, did everything. And then last year after the playoffs, like, I did the opposite. I just went to Seattle, spent the whole summer in Seattle. So I think, you know, this year definitely would be, you know, focusing on my body, focusing on getting in shape. I think coming into the season this year, I was in elite shape, which is part of the reason I was so upset when I got hurt, because I was feeling so great. But, yeah, I think identifying my weaknesses is always something, you know, where I look at kind of my season as a whole. And where I was, you know, good, where I was great, where I was, you know, rough and could get better. But I also think going to the playoffs and playing in the playoffs and seeing that environment, feeling that, kind of changed my way of thinking of like, okay, how should I approach my work in the off season? Like, simplifying your game, you know, because in the playoffs you're dealing with different coverages, you're playing a team for a whole series, and so you got to be able to operate in tight spaces. And so I think that was something I worked on this past summer was, kind of cutting the fat and just working on, phone booth basically. Like how can I score in that small space? But every summer I try to, add a little something, but also just sharpen all the stuff that I know I'm good at, kind of figuring out now where my spots are. I think in my third year, I've kind of been able to identify. And so I'm going to just keep building on that and also just continuing to work on my body.
But what is it early in the year that is so different than the rest of the year?
Every team is trying to figure out what they have, who's going to fill this role. And so it's a lot more up and down. You might have certain guys in rotation, whether it's a rookie, a two-way guy, whoever, that's getting a lot of minutes, and they might be playing well. And I think as the season goes and you get to that post-All-Star break, that's kind of where the rotation starts to tighten up. Teams are either, tanking or they're fighting to get in the playoffs. And so you kind of start seeing that difference where you play a team that's trying to get there to the playoffs. They're playing 8-9 guys. Rookies might not be playing anymore, whatever it is. And then you play a tanking team and all their stars are out. You got two ways out there and whatever. So while the style of basketball changes, I think teams get better as the season, like those teams that are in the playoffs, I think get better as the year goes on. I think like Milwaukee's a great example. I think they started off this year like 2-11 or something, 2-9. And now they're, the 4 seed. And so those teams that kind of have to find their identity, it takes them a while. But then, by the back half of the season, they're playing good basketball. And then the playoffs is a totally different season, a totally different game.
Yeah.
And so that's like a whole nother layer of it.
That was the most fun you ever had playing in a 7-game series in the NBA playoffs?
My God, it was the best thing ever. I mean, I remember being on the World Cup team and I was, just chilling with Ant. And we was just chopping up about hoop, and he was like, "Man, wait till you get in them playoffs." Like, he's like, "Once I got in them playoffs, that's all I thought about. Like, I don't even think about the regular season. All I'm worried about is the playoffs." And so, like, once I got there, like, that's how I feel now. It's like just the atmosphere, the way the game is called by the officials. The pace of the game, it just slows down. It's way more, possession by possession, just kind of. Adjustments on the fly, adjustments game by game, and you really have to be sharp, mentally to be out there. And it's also just like the momentum feels so much more, heavy. Like whether it's, I remember, we lost game 1 and 2 in Cleveland, and I remember, we lost both games, I think by 10+. And I just remember, Cleveland was talking a lot of shit. They was telling us we was too young, we didn't belong here. And then we come back here game 3 and 4 and we blow them out by 30 both games. And it was like, we flipped it on them where it was like, nah, we're here and we're going to compete. And then I just remember that game 5 back in Cleveland and being so ready for that game, being like, this is the game that can turn the series. And we played our off. Like we played our off. And we got it down to the last possession and we didn't win the game. And then we come back game 6, beat them again. And then game 7 was like the craziest game of my life, where it was just like everything riding on this one game. The energy's crazy. And just the up and downs of that game. We was up 20 in the first half.
That's crazy. And
then they come out in the third quarter and Donovan Mitchell, I think, scored like 6 straight points and they just start running it. And us being a young team without that experience, that game 7 experience, we just kind of crumbled a little bit where we just felt that pressure. When you're on the road in the playoffs, nobody's cheering for you. Every time you score a bucket, it's dead quiet, so it's just a totally different vibe. And, honestly, like he said, like it's all you think about after that. It's all you think about.
And that game 7 though will come back and be a lesson when you guys go win one on the road.
Yeah,
those game 5s are crazy.
Game 5 was nuts.
Yeah,
I was like, for me, it's game 7, game 5, then game 6. Game 5 for me was like, that was a fun game.
Yeah,
that was a fun game.
You seem to have a great understanding of off the court, the moves you've made, the team you put around you, how you operate in a business space, your like curiosity around it. I noticed right away. Was that something like having parents that were athletes? Mm-hmm. Was that helpful being at Duke? Because you do seem to have a great kind of knack for what it is that you want to do in terms of building your brand and building your off the court life.
That was something that I learned kind of towards my teenage years. I think my dad, really was a big part of that. Him owning our family business, his family business, and seeing how he built that up and how he took it from kind of the ground up to where it is now, where they're, doing really well, and just seeing all the stuff he had to go through. It kind of showed me, what it takes to run a successful business and the commitment you have to have. And then, using, his is, food distribution, mine's is sports.
Yeah.
So I think going to Duke, being in that environment, meeting all these great people I still meet to this day who come up to me and tell me they're Duke alumni and instantly have a connection. It's been awesome. And I think, I'm still early, and so I'm still finding my way, but I think having those early keys to success, through my parents, obviously, and then being able to go to college, be around it, be at K Academy, and I'm sitting with the owner of the Atlanta Hawks and the owner of Apple and all these guys, and you're like, wow, we all went to the same school, and I can reach out to these guys at any point in time and have a conversation. It just kind of opened my eyes to how small the world is.
Yeah, but that Duke network is crazy.
The Duke network is ridiculous.
They have like Eddie Q and Adam Silver, and it's wild. Everybody. It's all every couple months. I run into somebody that's doing really well, and they're like, "Hey, man, I went to Duke class of '93 or class of '01," and I'm like, "Damn." Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this is like, and the fact that they know I went there, I only went there for 1 year. They graduated, went to school, and just the fact that I was able to go there for 1 year and put on for the university, you have that forever.
But it's like Kevin went to Texas for 1 year. They didn't even get to the Sweet 16. But when he's back there, it's like a focus.
He's love, yeah.
He's got a network. He's got opportunities. It's a real home.
Yeah. No, and also like just from the basketball side, like you meet all the basketball guys, obviously, but then some of the older guys, they're like best friends with these guys. So then now they're introducing you. They got this brotherhood dinner at Summer League in Vegas. You all go, and it's players, it's coaches, it's GMs, and you're just like, wow, I didn't even know this guy right here went to Duke. So it's a cool thing to be a part of.
Your Jumpman crew has that like feeling, like seeing that trip you guys all took.
Yeah.
What does that affiliation mean? Like, what does being part of that Jumpman family and being a part of Jordan kind of mean as you've started your journey?
Yeah, I say it means everything to me, because I think the Jordan brand, it just represents, greatness, in all ways. My grandfather, he was a huge Michael Jordan fan. He used to have these Michael Jordan figurines in his room. And so from early age, and he loved Jordans as well, so I always was very familiar with Michael Jordan. And I still remember getting the call from Jamal Crawford telling me that Michael Jordan reached out to him to asking about me. And like once I heard that, that was all I needed to hear to make my decision, because he is the greatest, and that's what he wants to be a part of the brand. And so, I want to be one of the greatest, and so to be affiliated with Jordan and be able to be a part of that close fraternity and that family, it means everything to me. And so I've had, great memories made already, but I feel like I'm still early and I can still, help build myself up with the brand. I did meet him one time and we talked for a couple minutes where he just was, shooting the shit with me a little bit. But he's a funny guy, man. He had that presence about him, where you walk in his presence and you kind of feel that energy. And, we were actually at a football game, college national championship. It was Michigan Jordan School versus Washington. So I was there obviously on Washington's behalf with my parents. And so we went in the suite where he was, and he was like, man, who you pulling for? And I was like, I'm pulling for Washington, man. It's hometown. He said, oh, he like looked at my rep. He was like, hey, make sure this dude don't get paid next week, man. And so that's just the type of guy you could tell, man. He's just a lighthearted dude.
Yeah. That's dope, man. And you mentioned your mom and your family, and then Jordan, you just had this PE that you put out into the market.
Yeah.
I know you're the ambassador on the airline. And all this will ultimately, I'm sure, lead to, like what all players want. Tell me about the new PE and just what you guys have been working on.
Yeah, the Air Series PE, reason why my mom is so much involved is because it's meant to be a unisex shoe, girls and boys being able to wear and hoop in it. And my PE is the Seattle Rotary PE, which the AU club I played for my whole life, and also was the Boys and Girls Club I grew up going to. And so I hold that close to home. And that's the reason I wanted to make the PE, for them and be able to sell it in stores, for them to be able to actually go to the store and buy it. But the shoe, I think Air, obviously represents kind of the greatness of the Jordan brand and just, me trying to be that, lead the next generation. I think that's kind of what I want to do, how I see myself as trying to kind of lead the next generation of hoopers and show them how to go about it the right way. And I think the Air Series is a great, starting point for that. And it's been, amazing, just the whole process with the team, coming up with the colorways and, showing the ideas, dating all the way back to, almost 2 years ago. It's just awesome to see the process and how it's came out. So I'm really excited, for people to be able to go out and get it.
That's dope. And did you have a lot of input in the design of your signature logo too? Yeah,
that took, man, that was one of the things that I didn't realize was such a, tricky process. Before coming into the NBA, it was I know my rookie year, I was like, man, I want a logo, right? I told my manager, I want a logo. And so thinking it was going to be done in a month. It actually took damn near 2 years. And so that was just a long drawn out process, but you want it to be perfect. You want the logo to represent you. You want it to, have certain, details that are specific to you. And so I think for me, it really showed me just kind of what all goes in terms of creative and just, making something that, represents you and people can look at that logo and know it's yours. And so it was dope. And now to see it, on the shoe, it's pretty surreal.
Yeah. And I guess the goal is that this logo stands test of time, right? Yeah. So the longer it takes, it's meant to be around for decades.
Yep.
Having a signature shoe always been a dream?
Yeah, I would say for sure. Ever since a kid, I was growing so fast as a kid that my parents didn't give me a lot of shoes at once because I was always growing out of them. But I remember my first pair of LeBrons I remember the KD5s came out.
Yeah,
I got those. I got 2 pairs of those. And then I always had one or 2 pairs of Jordans. Kobe came out with the snake skins, the Kobe 6s. I remember just all those being a kid. I wasn't a sneakerhead because I could never have all these sneakers at one time, but I always, always had some retros. I was a huge fan of the 3s, white cement 3s. I was my favorite shoe growing up.
Yeah. Is Seattle hoops underrated still?
Seattle hoops underrated still?
I feel like people still, there's chatter around it.
Yeah, there's chatter around it, but I think it's always going to be underrated until someone just comes and does a Netflix documentary or something. Yeah, I would be, definitely be the catalyst to that, when the time is right. But I think it will, like I said, it'll always be underrated until someone is able to just put it all in the one documentary and just tell the whole story. Because I think there's so many layers to it, and there's so many, you got boroughs in New York. Everyone thinks it's just Seattle when really there's Seattle, there's Federal Way, there's South Seattle, there's the Central District, there's Tacoma. And so we all are, in these different sections, but we all represent, the 206 or the 253. And so I think, no one really understands that unless you're from there. Just going back there every summer, that's part of the reason I always go back is because, I know that I'll be able to, go chop it up with Jamal at any time. This past summer, I was spending a lot of time with IT, Isaiah Thomas, and we were in the gym a lot, every morning. And just being around him, I look at him as a guy, where he has an insane work ethic. And so we never even worked out together, but we would just work out at opposite ends of the court. And I would be working out, doing my stuff. He'd be working out, doing his stuff. And I'd hear him down there, yelling at himself, and that would just make me, I got to stay locked in because I know he's over there, going hard as he can. And so Zach LaVine, another guy who I'm around all the time. Spencer Hawes, he helped me a lot in high school. Shout out to my trainer, Mike Knight. But Spencer Hawes, he spent probably 6 months, maybe longer, maybe a year during COVID, and he wasn't even in the league anymore, but he was still, hooping, staying in shape. And he spent, 10 months with me just during COVID in the gym every day, playing ones, you know, going over post moves, teaching me that, you know, it's not about how fast you're going. It's about, you know, how you sell your moves and just stuff like that where, you know, he doesn't have to do that, you know, but all these guys just love the game. They love the city. They all want to bring up the next guy to where, you know, he's going out his way to look out for me. And so it's a special fraternity, man. And I'm proud to be a part of it because growing up, like those were the guys I looked up to. Like outside of, you know, the LeBrons, Carmelos, and Kevin Durant's, like I was fans of all the guys from the city. So just being able to be a part of that now and be like the next one, it just motivates me to do the same thing that they did for me.
And what would happen if the Sonics came back?
Oh, the city would explode. The city would go crazy. I mean, that's the only thing that the city's missing, honestly. I mean, we already have ridiculous sports fans. Our Seahawks fans are great. The new hockey team fans is great. And I mean, Jamal has his league every summer, and it's sold out. You know, every weekend. I mean, that was just 3 years ago when LeBron came, and it was literally a line a mile long just to see LeBron. And so the city has a genuine love for basketball, and I think, like I said, that's the only thing they're missing. I think, you know, if they're able to get that, it'll be like a boom in Seattle where like it'll just boost everything.
That'll be crazy. Good luck the rest of the way, bro.
Appreciate you.
Rooting for you guys. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.
I do think you should make this doc.
No, we're gonna get that done. It might take some time, you know, 10 years plus, but when it's done, it'll be done right.
All right, perfect.
Yes, sir.
Tune in, subscribe. Paolo, appreciate you. Go cop his new shoe. And we'll see you all soon. This is Boardroom, boardroom.tv. Peace.
Thank you.